Hi, I'm Brad Hurst and thank you for watching. Before we start, I just want to say something by way of exhortation. There are a lot of videos out there on the issue of Bible prophecy. You see them on YouTube, Facebook, and different websites. Some of the videos are good, some are not so good. Any video that's put out by somebody who is not part of a local church fellowship is not one that we should be watching. The Spirit of the Lord is not with those people. If you are watching any such video, you need to stop watching those videos. Those people are not encouraging us to be part of our local church. Even John said regarding the church of Sardis in Revelation chapter 3, verse 4, that even in Sardis, a very bad church, there were people in that church who had not stained their garments. That is to be both you and me. No matter what, whether we can serve in the way that we would like to, we are to be part of the local fellowship. Our study has been one of history. We've been tracing the Jewish people and the spirit or the doctrine of Antichrist. We started in Babylon and saw the impact that Babylon had on the Jewish people with the development of a system called Kabbalism. We continued to watch that develop through the Persian period and into the Greek period. It got its way into the New Testament period and began to combine with Hellenism and developed into what we now call Gnosticism. As it continued to grow, we also watched the extent of the Jewish wars and how the Jewish wars played a part in the geographic rearrangement of the Persian and the Roman empires. After the Jewish wars, we talked about the Arian controversy. Hellenism had found its way into the churches, and the issue of the doctrine of Christ would be severely affected. Arianism would go on to move to the east and develop what we know today as a system of thought that we'll later on see is Islam. The Arians, when they were basically moved out or kicked out of the Byzantine Empire, they went on to build their own structure that enshrined the Arian creed. That structure is known as the Dome of the Rock. We are going to pick up from the point of the Dome of the Rock and continue all the way through the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Daniel chapter 2 tells us that we are to expect a series of empires. Daniel 7 says the same, and Daniel 8 also says the same. That's the premise we're working on. Successive empires without prophetic gaps. That's what we're looking at. And we're going to go through history, and we're going to continue to see if that's what we find. At the end of this video, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to have a time of worship. A friend or an acquaintance of mine by the name of Rachel Gould has sent me a video of her singing. I find her music to just be wonderful. I hope that you will enjoy her as much as I have. And if you do, at the end of the video, there will be a link to her webpage and also to her Facebook page where you can see more of her music and maybe buy some. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy. I want to add something that is very significant with regard to our last video. In 541 AD, a great plague struck the Middle East and lasted several years. Only two people groups seemed to be unaffected. The Turks to the north and the Arab nomads of Syria and North Africa or North Arabia. So severe was the plague that both the Byzantine and the Persian empires abandoned their fortresses and settlements in Syria. The Arabs simply moved in. Being of the Arian position, they would go on to side with Persia in the controversy. Upon the defeat of Persia by Heraclius in 628 AD, the Arabs took over the weakened Persian Empire. Despite his victory, Heraclius was not out of the woods. The plague and the war had left him both short on manpower and money. He could not continue to manage North Africa much longer, so he made a tactical decision. He would offer the Arabs all of Syria and North Africa in exchange for peace. The Arabs accepted, and thus began the Umayyad Caliphate. Power was transferred from Persia to Damascus, and a great church was constructed from which the Arian doctrine was centered. Its slogan was peace/Islam, and the caliphate was known as the House of David, with the caliph being the son of David. Today, the church is known as the Great Mosque. This new caliphate would last from 628 through 750 AD. During this time, the Arabs would enshrine the Arian creed in the Dome of the Rock, burn Mecca, Medina, and the Kaaba, and the Great Library of Alexandria. It would treat Arianism as an exclusive religion for the Arabs. The Arabs would attempt to destroy Constantinople in 674 and 717 AD. They failed both times. However, they were met with no resistance in Arian North Africa and attempted an invasion of Europe through Spain. They would be stopped by Charles Martel of France in 732 AD. This, together with their defeat at Constantinople, would essentially insulate Europe from any further Arab/Arian/Islamic influence for about 700 years. However, it was not until 1492 that the Arabs were driven out of Spain. During the entire period of the Arab Umayyad Caliphate, there is not one contemporary record of a prophet by the proper name of Muhammad. There are no Syrian, Arabic, North African, East African, Byzantine, European, Turkish, or any other records of said prophet. That would remain the case for at least 200 years. Even the coins with the word Muhammad were depictions of the Arian rendition of Jesus as depicted in the Dome of the Rock. Thus, the story of Muhammad constitutes the biggest lie since the Garden of Eden. The Grand Delusion, 2 Thessalonians 2, 10 through 12, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. I'm not saying this is the fulfillment of it. I believe it's a bigger picture. I don't think it's one single event, but I do believe that we are in the process and have been in the process for several hundred years of watching this particular prophecy unfold, and it will unfold at the right time. In 750 AD, a new Arab dynasty was established, the Abbasid dynasty. This Arab dynasty was ecumenical and would solicit the help of the Persians with the promise of reform and installing Persians into government positions. This promise was kept, and the dynasty would go on to be one of the longest
in what was now Islam. A new center for Islam would be built. It would be built in what we know as the plain of Shinar, Mesopotamia. This center would be the center of Islam from 762 through 1258 AD. It would become the new center for Greek philosophy and a clearinghouse for all of the world's religions and systems of thought, as well as a center for commerce. It was named the Gift of God, or Baghdad in Persian. From there, Islam would be spread to the north and east. The school of learning was called the House of Wisdom. Consider this from Zechariah 5. Then the angel that talked with me went forth, and said unto me, Lift up now thine eyes, and see, what is this that goeth forth? And I said, What is it? And he said, This is an ephah that goeth forth. He said, Moreover, this is their resemblance through all the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, This is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came out two women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then I said to the angel that talked with me, Whither do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, To build it an house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set thereupon her own base. I'm just postulating. Is it possible that this was fulfilled with the construction of Baghdad? I mean, we had two religious systems in heretical Christianity and Zoroastrianism, or maybe even Kabbalism, I don't know. They got together in the plain of Shinar, and a religious system began to be developed out of that area. And specifically, they built a structure and kind of established it on its own foundation in the area that's actually being addressed here. Is this possible that this was fulfilled with the building of the city of Baghdad? You tell me. To the north of Persia/Iran, a new threat was emerging. The Gokturks were growing in numbers and power. They were not affected by the previously mentioned plague and had become a major player on the international scene. Out of concern, the Iranians attempted to thwart this threat by two means. First, they built and dug a series of mounds and trenches in the Transoxania regions to slow or even halt any cavalry advance. The people of these regions had originally come under the influence of Mani, whom we mentioned in our fourth video in our series at 31 through 35 minutes. The second effort was done through missionary expeditions to convert the Turks to Islam, which at this time was still an Arian Christian sect. Because of the influence of Mani, these Gokturks had a pseudo-Christian Gnostic Zoroastrian worldview. It was relatively easy to convert said people to Islam. Note, it is possible that these people had little to no knowledge of the historical Jesus. It is by way of speculation that this may be the point at which the title of Muhammad began to move away from Jesus and toward the use of a proper name for a prophet. The missionary efforts were very successful. The Turks began to trade with and even migrate into Iran. Over time, they got into government positions that would eventually drive the Arabs out altogether. They even out-Islamed the Persians and became the caretakers of Islam and the centers of learning in Persia. To the east, they would engage in jihad against the Mongols. That would prove to be nearly fatal. In 1096 AD, the Seljuk Turks of Iran would attack Constantinople. It was an attempt to end the controversy altogether. In 1096 AD, the Seljuk Turks of Iran would attack Constantinople. It was an attempt to end the controversy altogether. The Byzantine Empire was on the verge of collapse. Pope Urban II would call for a resistance and come to the aid of Constantinople. The campaign was successful, and for the time being, the Turks were driven back. From 1147 through 1272, 8 more crusades were launched with the intent of regaining control over North Africa and the Holy Land. In the end, they would ultimately fail. The Turks of Iran would go on to develop the concept of a prophet by the name of Muhammad and create what today is Sunni Islam, which states that only a direct descendant of Muhammad could lead them. In 1258 AD, an event began that would forever change the makeup of the Middle East. The Mongols, Khan dynasty, would invade from the areas of Mongolia. These people had been under the influence of many since about the 3rd century AD. They hated Islam and the Jews. Not only did the Khans conquer China, they moved west into parts of Central Asia and south into the Middle East. The Turks would flee both west and south. Not only did they flee into Iran, they somehow found a way around or through the Caucasus, sidestepping the gates of Gog, constructed by Alexander to keep them out. Thus, they came into the Byzantine Empire as refugees. The Khans would go on to destroy Baghdad in 1258. They hunted down anyone associated with the supposed bloodline of Muhammad and killed them. Thus, the entire Abbasid family was killed. Only the Nestorian Christians were spared. It was their intent to destroy the Sunni Islam of the Turks. The Khans would go on to destroy the political infrastructure of the entire Middle East. This left a vacuum of power that would eventually be filled by the Turks. The next 200 years saw many developments. First, the Iranians/Persians were trying to regain their dominance in Islam. They would go on to rebuild Baghdad and develop a new sect of Islam, one that did not require an alleged descendant of Muhammad to lead them. This new sect would be known as Shia and was very ecumenical. In the Byzantium territories, hordes of Turks would continue to migrate in. They would settle in refugee camps and after time demand and be granted autonomy. Eventually, they would grow more powerful than the regional authorities and began to take over. In Southern Europe, they would exploit the regional rivalries of Southern Europe with a pledge to defend them for a tax to be paid. Divide and conquer was their tactic. Both Southern Europe and Anatolia became so divided that they had no power to resist. In 1453 AD, Constantinople was cut off from the world. The Ottoman Turk Sultan Muhammad conquered Constantinople. This would mark the end of the 1776 years of the Greco-Roman Empire, which was depicted in the bronze of Daniel 2, the leopard of Daniel 7, and the 4 horns of Daniel 8. A new empire of iron with 2 legs would take its place. The Sunni Islam of the Ottoman Turks with its center in Constantinople, Istanbul. The Shia Islam of Iran with its center in Baghdad. Both would last until 1917 AD. Islam was the iron. It seemed as though all would be lost to Islam, but the living hope of Christ would stage a comeback, the like of which was never seen. The Greeks of Constantinople would flee to Italy with their Greek Bible and church documents. These manuscripts would soon be translated into the language of the common people and spark a revolution that would eventually be the demise of the new two-part Islamic empire.
I hope you have found this to be helpful. If you have, please subscribe and please share. All right, as I mentioned, I want to close with a time of worship. So I bring to you Rachel Gould. I hope you'll enjoy her. Thank you.
Great a chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then